Okay, so I chose to look at the case study involving auto safety and the teen driver course and analyze that with some instructional design concepts. So, to give you a little background about the case, Auto Safety is a organization that provides driver safety training to teens and their parents. They were recently bought out, and the new owner wants to expand. Now, their training actually has two parts, and both parts have to be attended by the student and their parent. There's a classroom part, which is a video that's facilitated by an instructor, and there's a driving part, which is hands-on in the student's car. The student does as instructed, the parent watches and learns. There's some challenges in this. It is hard to find a time that works for the student and the parent that doesn't require excess travel for the instructor. Even just finding a time when students and parents can attend is tough when you throw in getting the instructor where they need to go. A lot of them are part-time with other jobs, so they don't want to have to take off work to do other days, so there are a lot of issues. The new organization wants to go online. The founder of the school is actually against online instruction. So what needs to be done in this situation? They would like to see a proposal for an online course they could use. And so what needs to happen is they need to look at ways to convince the owner that this is a good option. We need to look at methods for teaching the content that's interesting and engaging. We need to look at ways of presenting the content to ensure that it is being mastered by the student. And then the other thing is the organization asked us to evaluate their evaluation process. They are currently using kind of a self-assessment where they ask the student questions to rate how they feel they are after they took the course for that. And they think their course is actually getting very good results, but it's not being reflected in their feedback. All right, so when I read this case, the whole time I was reading, I really went, wow, this is just perfect, set up for an online course, and lots and lots of good ideas, which I will share later. First of all, they've got a video, and it's a long video, but it's slightly out of date. And what they could do is update the content for the video, but instead of making it one long video, they can break it down into small manageable intervals that can be consumed in 15 to 30 minute increments so that the student's not having to spend solid block of time online. You could also embed interactive elements right into the content, sort of a little call-outs for the important information to ensure that the student's actively engaged and not just hitting play and walking away, which is one of the concerns of the owner, and that actually has been proven to be a very effective way of using video online. A discussion forum or online office hours could be implemented so that they could have access to a live instructor. It would be a whole lot cheaper to have someone just on call. You pick a Tuesday night and say sit by your computer for the next 2 hours. Another thing you could do is they get a lot of the same questions, so you could have a FAQ video as part of the content and have one of your more engaging instructors answer the most common questions. More reactions. The way you would probably handle that is about 1 to 2 weeks before the driving session. The course could be made available, and all the content would have to be successfully completed for the student to be able to drive. There could be a student section and a parent section in the content, maybe even one they do together. I would take the testimonials that they use. They have that kind of pulled out as a separate part of the video, and actually embed them in associated lessons. That'll give it a little more weight. For example, someone was texting and driving and had an accident. You could use that testimonial for distracted driving unit. You could have content quizzes that have to be passed before the student is allowed to drive. Questions on those quizzes might come from a question pool so that if they don't pass the quiz, they can get a new quiz with not exactly the same questions. So what about John Oliver's concerns? He's older fellow, doesn't think much of online teaching, thinks it's going to damage a company's reputation. I would argue that it could do the opposite. Online courses have evolved. They are now found to be as good as or better than face-to-face content in many respects, or face-to-face courses in many respects. One of the neat things you can do, if you're using prepared content, it's going to be a whole lot easier to keep that content current online, especially if you do it in small parts. So if one small part of your content gets outdated, you can just update that. You don't have to update the whole video. It gives the parents and the students flexibility. If you use cutting edge technology, you have something else you can advertise. So right then and there, selling the people thinking about taking the course on the fact that they can complete the classroom part on their own time, and it's going to be, this modern course could very much improve their reputation. Another thing he worried about was how to know if the students actually watched the videos. He said he envisioned them hitting play and walking away. And to be honest, that probably would happen if you stuck a great big long video up there and expected them to sit still that long. But the neat thing with the online course is you could create interactive content that requires student input to complete. So, it would play for a while and then you'd have to answer a question about what you just saw before it keeps going. The other thing is have content-related quizzes that have to be passed. And he thinks you need a live person to explain the technical matters in the video, which may or may not be true. You could certainly have a video of one of your more engaging instructors explaining the technical material and just include that right there with your content. You could have someone on call available to answer questions. Okay, so what sort of things do we need to do? The other part of this project was to look at evaluation. What do we need to do to evaluate the feasibility of converting it to online? There are things we need to consider. What technology would be required to create the content? That's an important thing to look at. What technology is needed to access the content? So, if you're going to offer this online, you have to make sure that the students and their parents would have the right technology to be able to get to the course material. How much time is the online course going to require? Adding in quizzes will bump up the time required, even if you keep the sections of the video, to add up to the same amount of time as it would take in class. But factor in the fact that they can do it on their own time and they're not traveling, it probably wouldn't be a huge impact. How would course completion be monitored? If you have self-grading quizzes and a system, a learning management system that keeps track of the grades, it could be self-graded. And how would course completion be demonstrated? Again, I threw out an answer to that with the margin, the passing criteria for that. But those are all sorts of things that we'd need to look at to see if this is feasible. All right. Now, the other thing we're supposed to look at is evaluating effectiveness. And what they do is they basically give their students a survey at the end that has some questions, and they say strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. And the students actually evaluate their own growth. Students really have to have a good insight into their abilities to be able to successfully complete this kind of survey and have it have any kind of meaning. They also ask for people's opinion on the course. Would they recommend it to a friend, and that sort of thing. So, again, not necessarily effective evaluation tools, especially without some coaching on the behalf of the kids. Even some of the wording is open to interpretation. The questions that start, I feel comfortable, whatever, holding the steering wheel in a certain way, doesn't mean they've mastered the skills. They could just feel comfortable doing it. They may not do it well. So having the students assess themselves is not really a very effective way to do that. So what can we do better? I would say the best way to assess the student growth and mastery of a skill is actually to have the instructor do it. Now, that adds a little work for the instructor, but if you do it right, you could set up a really great system that would, I think, thrill the parents. If the goal is to maximize the instructor's time with the students, create an app. Okay, so give the instructor an iPad with this app that they run, and essentially it would come maybe preloaded. You know, each time you go to a session, it would have the student's name and their email address and their parent's email address, and then have the instructor rate the student the first time they drive in the app, and then, you know, after they've learned that new concept, okay, how do they do it the first time, and then have them rate them again at the end of the session for that, and hit submit. And then the app could use an algorithm to rate the growth of the student and generate an email that shows the student's growth in areas where they still might need work. The email would go to the student and the parent, and it could contain information that the parents could use on how to continue to help their child improve their skill and become a better driver. And then also in that email, I would include a link to a survey for the parent and student to complete, giving their feedback and opinions. So again, you're getting a lot more information that way, and a more benefit for the parents and the student, and a great chance to follow up, because the feedback from the instructor is really how they're going to grow. All right, now I've got a little video here that's going to show I applied a instructional design model to the current problem, and this is the prepared solution of the presentation that I made that I would give to the organization. Okay, so this is my application of research-based instructional design principle to the auto safety case study, and I looked at the different models that we studied all semester, and I decided that I would go ahead and use the mashup I created earlier in the term. I actually did a mashup of Merrill's first principles and universal design for learning, and it really suited well my style of instructional design, and so I thought it would be fun to test it out with the actual project. And the focus of this mashup is there's really three parts. The first thing you need to do is look at the what and the why. What do they need to learn, and why do they need to learn it? And telling students those two things are going to help them get a better grasp of what they're doing. Then the second thing when you're designing the course is take a look at how you're going to get there. So how are we going to get that content to the students? And the third element we're going to investigate is how do we know? Okay, so yeah, we put the content out there. How do we know that the students mastered it? So we're going to apply this to the auto safety course and see what we figure out. Okay, so the first element is what and why, and I actually broke this into two parts. Since the course exists for students and parents, I decided it would make the most sense to apply it to each of them individually. And we were told what content they have already in their video, and what I did was kind of adapt that. Some of it will be combined into these units, but I took it down from 9 units to 6. And each unit would be presented individually as opposed to being one big concept. The first one is what is a new driver. Second is driving as a psychomotor skill. The third is common hazards, which this section needs updating. No, not this section, the next one. Sorry. Fourth is possible distractions, which needs updating to include cell phones, texting, and digital music. Next one we're going to look at is how to deal with feedback from the environment while you're driving. And the last one is psychological factors that are involved with driving. And again, these will each be divided into their own separate unit. Each video should be interactive with pauses in the video to quiz the students or call out important details. This is actually been documented to be a very effective method for using videos in an online course. I've got a source for that at the end. And also I think they should include some sort of an FAQ video. One of John Oliver's big concerns was the fact that if you don't have a live person, how are they going to address questions, concerns, and that sort of thing. So you could go and poll your instructors, figure out what the most common questions that are asked at these programs are, and create this FAQ video. If you use actual instructors answering the most common questions in an engaging manner, I think we can cover most of what he's concerned about. So that's kind of what we're going to include. But we also want the students to understand why they need to know it. A couple ways we can do that is we can include relevant testimonials. So if we're talking about distractions, have a testimonial from someone whose child was killed texting while driving. Put that impactful part right in there with the content it goes along with that will get their attention and bring home what it is why it is they need to understand it. The other thing we can do is include clips of the instructors explaining how the material will be used on Saturday when they do the driving part. And then we also need to look at the parents section. Again, this course is unique in that it includes both the students and the parents. So the parents should have an element of the online course as well. And some of the content will be the same. They probably should also have a section on what to expect when they go on Saturday. I think they'd appreciate that. How to make the most of Saturday's driving experience, and maybe an FAQ section of questions that parents typically ask. And helping them understand why they could include the statistics about the success rate of the course that they quoted, John Oliver quoted at the interview they did with him. They can also include the testimonials that the parents can relate to. The parents seem to really appreciate and enjoy, or at least like, the testimonial part of the course. After you finish the what and why, we need to look at how we'll know. And that, in this case, this is a short course. I mean, really the content shouldn't take more than about 90 minutes to 2 hours to get through. So what we're going to do, we're not going to have a large variety, which, typically you would want in this type of instructional design model, but we can still do some variety. So we'll do quizzing for each unit, and ideally you would have a large test bank of questions, and students will be required to get a certain number of questions right on each unit before they can progress. So you need a test bank, again, with a lot of different questions so that the students won't necessarily be taking the same test over and over. The quiz questions don't have to be text necessarily. They can be, but they can also use images. So you might give them a picture and ask them to identify hazards or something like that. It is a short course, so we don't need a variety of assignments. And they should be required to answer a certain number of questions correctly in order to be able to participate. As far as the parents go, I really kind of decided that if a parent is interested enough in helping their teen to be a better driver to actually pay for this type of a course, then they're probably going to be involved and motivated already. So we're not going to have any kind of content analysis or quizzes or anything. We're going to assume that they do their part. All right, so the next section we need to talk about is the how will we get there. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can do an introductory video that explains how the course will work. That's kind of the show in the big picture step from the mashup I created. The next thing we can do, and this wasn't on the content page, but it's more of a review, is to have a quiz on basic road rules that the student should already know if they have their permit. And if you have a student who performs poorly on that, they can watch some review videos and make sure they're up to speed. So that's kind of the build on what you know element of that. Wherever possible, they should be using videos actually demonstrating the concept of being explained. Okay. Use pictures in the testimonial. That's pictures worth 1,000 words, as they say. That's the show the students one element of the design model. For non-instructional, like informational type content, you might want to consider alternative means of instruction, maybe cartoons or comic strips, just to change it up a little but keep the students interested. The quizzes should go with each unit, so there shouldn't be one big one at the end, but as they go through, if the threshold score isn't met, then the students could retake the quiz, and when they have completed all of the work, they'll get a certificate of completion, and they need to print that and bring it to the driving session. So that, as I said, that's kind of their motivator for finishing if they would not be allowed to drive. And I think if we can pull all these elements together, we do have a program that's interactive, engaging, instructional, and adaptable or upgradable. Very easy. If you have individual elements for each unit, if something changes, you can pull that unit, modify it, and move forward. And I just want to wrap up here. These are the sources I use, not just for this presentation, but for the entire project. Thank you very much. Okay, so again, that's the overview of how I would actually design the course using my MUD mashup, Merrill's plus Universal Design. And just in case you didn't catch them on the video, there are the sources. All right, thank you very much.